Hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. It's Saturday and just ever so slightly after 3 p.m., which means it's time for the SPL. My name's Gormizer, and right beside me is none other than Mifflin. And Mifflin, we've actually got some interesting games coming up for me, and this first one is actually the one that I think is the most interesting because it's going to define a lot about the bottom four teams in the league. Knights and Renegades, so far maybe the most consistent performing compared to Obey and E United, and whoever wins this kind of gets their crown and maybe holds on to that fifth place spot and solidifies themselves as that team that's just behind the top four.
Yeah, I've really claimed this set to be the battle of the middle for the crown of the center, something along those lines, because it
Sounds about
really
right.
is between PK and Renegades for that top spot of the bottom fourth, as you so eloquently stated earlier. These guys are both incredibly talented teams. They both have their own ideal styles, but it just seems like they haven't quite been able to transfer it into really matching up against those top four teams, except for these random strokes of brilliance that come every so often.
Well, we're going to be looking at this year, well, last year's, the reigning world champs, who are honestly not too unfamiliar with being down there in sixth place. I mean, these guys, you have to imagine, well, as you can see, they're pretty comfortable overall because, I mean, let's face it, last year they spent most of their time towards the bottom end overall, and they still got themselves a world championship. So it's not the end-all be-all in terms of standing if you're able to have that one good weekend. And so far they have been pretty consistent. I think they've slowed down some of those games. There was one, I believe it's this one against Obey, that went a little while into it. Not quite 78 minutes into it, but still it lasted long for the SPL. And it was maybe a little eye-opening as they weren't as far ahead as we thought they were.
Yeah, it seems like PK in particular is a team that plays to the strength of their enemies. If they're playing against E United or Obey, it seems like PK really does play to their level, but they're also able to drag themselves up to match a little bit of what Radiance or Ghost are doing. It seems like, honestly, if I had to put my finger on it, it comes down to how well they prep for these other teams. Maybe they're not showing as much respect towards the E Uniteds and Obeys of the league, not nearly as much so as they would maybe the Radiance, Ghost, Sanguine, SSGs, and that might be particularly why we start to see them struggle a little bit more towards those bottom-seeded squads.
Well, they're going to end up going here against the Renegades, who have been pretty much neck and neck with the Knights, at least in my eyes, of terms of gameplay these last few weeks. Got to talk about Jake a little bit yesterday on the waiting room as at least one of my favorite players this year, especially in terms of most improved. But I think all of this team, whether it's behind SOT, Lasbra, Jake, Barracuda, even Venenu in a lot of these plays, someone seems to be stepping up to the plate. It's just never all at the same time.
Yeah, it really comes down to a desync from the Renegades. In particular, one play that's stood out to me a couple of times, and the last couple of times we got to see them play, is that once they fall behind, it seems like they don't really know how they want to play their defenses. But when they pull ahead, they're usually very strong about maintaining their lead and able to push it well into the mid-game, into the late game, and potentially turn it into a win. It's just, I'm worried about how well these guys are going to play from behind if they do fall behind of PK.
Now, leads maybe meaning more here than they do in any other game. We see Ghost, we see Sanguine consistently fighting from behind. It's all going to be a little bit of early game pressure, which so far the Knights have maybe showcased a little bit better. But the Renegades, a lot of pressure on them for their performance today to maybe try and keep their fifth place spot. So, of course, we got to sit down and talk with Ro to find out how he's feeling and the team's feeling going into the set.
Well, I have Ro here with me, the coach for Renegades. And Ro, the first thing I want to ask you, man, is I know that this hasn't exactly been maybe the phase that you all wanted, but what has been the team's focus sort of coming into this phase? What has been sort of the most important thing for you with this team?
Look, we were really excited with the mid-season changes. That was a fantastic patch. I think there's been a lot of good patches recently, so we're really excited to just dive into like a new meta, especially in the solo lane. I think there's been a lot of changes with no glad shield and stuff like that. I think it stagnated a little bit. I think the release of Cthulhu put a stop of, like, you know, you're always going to have to deal with that god in the solo lane, and carries, like the mage ADCs that came into the meta are going to have to deal with that god as well. So, I don't know. It's been interesting, but we've been focused on ourselves more than anything because, obviously, we're near the bottom of the standings right now. Not at the bottom yet. Well, I shouldn't say yet. Not at the bottom right now, but it just feels like we're on the cusp and we're always battling to keep afloat. So, the real goal is to just, like, find some success and level up away from where we're at, and that would feel a lot better for us mentally because it's stressful being near the bottom.
Well, that's kind of exactly where I was going to go next. You all are, I would say, one of those middle-of-the-pack teams. You're right next to the Knights, who you all are about to play. So how important are these games up against other teams that are in a similar spot in the standings to where you all are?
Yeah, I mean, this really is a week to prove ourselves, right? I think if we beat Knights, then, well, our record still wouldn't be very good against them, but it would really prove that we are contending with the top 5, top 6, rather than the bottom 3, you know? Because I think that's where we stand right now. It's like us, United and Obey really battling it out to keep out of the bottom 2, and that's not a good feeling. I'd rather be competing with moving above. I think United showed a lot of glimpses of moving above last phase. I think they've struggled a bit this phase, and it's kind of the opposite for Obey now. They were struggling last phase and are doing a lot better now. We did beat them 2-0, but Obey beat United, and then we kind of struggled against United. It was one of our worst results, and then Knights beat Obey pretty cleanly. So, like, statistically, or at least the odds should be in their favor if I was a betting man. So I guess we're motivated to beat the odds this week.
Well, to kind of look at it a slightly more positive note, what have you felt like is the team's biggest improvement since you've been here with the squad? Because I think that, you know, your team has looked better, especially in this phase, than maybe we saw in the first phase.
Yeah, I think we struggled to find our identity a lot in the first phase, and a lot of the conversations we had between splits helped find our identity, or at least get everybody on the same page in that regard, which is very important as a SMITE team, because you don't want to be pulling in too many different directions. You know, I don't want one player that just wants to be a pressure player all the time, or one player that doesn't want to comm as much and relies on other people to fill that communication gap. So it really came down to finding our structure, finding our identity, and like perfecting it as well, because we can't just be something and that isn't effective. You know, we have to be playing the meta, or playing things that are at least strong against the meta gods, or playing the meta gods, and we've struggled with that in the past. And then communication structure is a big one as well. It's just a lot of offline conversations that's really helped us in the in-game. Can't delve too deep into them because it reveals like a lot of how we work behind the scenes, but it's just being clearer and being on the same page.
Well, glad to see that you all are making those improvements, that it's coming from working together behind the scenes. Always great to get a chance to hear from your Row. Hopefully you all are looking great here in this next match coming up against the Knights.
Thank you. Enjoy the games.
Always eloquently put there from Row and the Renegades, as they seem to be pretty confident in their ability to take on the Knights here. I'm excited to see it, and Mifflin, I'm pretty sure you are as well. So honestly, we should just go ahead and jump into picks and bans to try and get this one knocked out of the way and started, as the Renegades try to hold on to their 5th place right now. And honestly, there's so much that can go right, so much that can go wrong, and the blink of an eye in picks and bans, let alone when it translates into game. What are some things that maybe you see fitting Renegades' playstyle that they could lean on here?
I think Renegades really need to lean on their strengths, which is the jungler. If Lazar gets off to a good start, or gets one of his comfort picks, that's really when he looks the best. And I think it also ties into the fact that Lazar is the most inconsistent player on the Renegades. If he's not really doing well, it really suffers everywhere on the map. Duo lane will fall behind, mid as well. So I think it's really proper for them to make sure that Lazar is comfortable. Outside of that, I think PK should very likely be prioritizing making sure that Paul gets something that he can have a huge impact on. This guy's been a lightning rod of bans for a very long time. I think it makes sense that they should at least try and get something for him in the top 3 picks. Outside of that, both teams should be looking to play their own game. And I'm keeping my eyes on the supports. Awesome Jake 408 with his weirdo pseudo meta picks, and Neilma playing Neilma's gameplay, which is just amazing.
I'll admit I'm a little sad we haven't gotten to see the tier support yet in Phase 2. Maybe today is the day, but also maybe not. We'll have to see for Renegades. As for one of the first and few times here for the Knights, Paul is out there matrix dodging the bans like anything. Nothing coming his way. His entire god pool available coming into this, as well as things like the Hebo, which are very flexible for teams like the Knights. Renegades with a lot of options, but maybe not any of the typical meta options available. Amaterasu slips through, and with Cthulhu, Nemesis, Freya, Oleron all taken off the board, she feels like the best one left standing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good pick for the Renegades. And this is kind of what happens when you do this phase of bans. You notice that a lot of the other teams usually throw in 1 or 2 target bans in that first 6, but it seems like Renegades and PK are only looking at the meta. That allows Amaterasu to make it through, which would be the next step up. And then looking at the other side, Rom is still available. That's been highly prioritized by players like Cyclone Spin on Radiance, and it's been hugely impactful in the team fights. But leaving Rom available here means that Renegades are going to get the likely next best soul laner. and a Cupid as well that could flex towards mid and ADC, I think Renegades might have got away a little bit here in the draft.
Well, they're feeling, I think, a little happy with that Amaterasu, but Rom, as you had kind of highlighted, very big for Radiance, but also it's been good and kind to Zapman, both recently and historically. So I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do. A legendary hunter playing a legendary hunter, so it'll be fun to watch. But the matchup that has rocked SMITE for literally, I think, its entire span at this point. Him going up against Barracuda over there in the duo lane. Jingwei locked in. An easy comfort pick for Barra. Is this going to come down to supports, or are these two hunters going to be able to kind of show us what they have and strong-arm each other?
I think if anyone's looking to strong-arm anybody, it's Zapman, who's going to be looking to get a lot more aggressive. The 1v1 potential of Rom and a Jingwei favors Rom, I'd say about 7-3 once those supports rotate out of lane. But Renegades pick up Jingwei instead, which is going to allow them to play safely. If she chooses not to bring the fight to Zap, there really shouldn't be too much solo potential over there, barring a gank from the junglers. And I think this is going to be Erlang Shen jungle. Tons of pressure. It has a really good gank potential into Rom and into Kakulin. I like this pickup a lot. And it seems like it's a pick that's really starting to have a resurgence in Phase 2. We've been seeing a lot more Erlang Shen recently.
Well, the Thoth maybe kind of throwing a loop for things. You know, we're talking about Paul and all of the things that he can run, and he ends up going to one that we see and has had success in the past, but isn't necessarily the first one I think of here. So the Knights reaching a little bit further into their pockets. We'll have to see how that works out as the Erlang, as you had highlighted, comes on in. Poseidon banned away by the Knights. Hunbats on the other side. So Renegades still looking towards their jungler, or at least the jungler for the Knights, trying to tear that down for Cuvo. Whereas it seems like the Knights are taking a little bit of a blast towards mid, but also that Ymir. And let's face it, Ymir hasn't been very successful. It is something that the Renegades have loved picking up. Is that a good ban in your eyes?
Look, Ymir might not have been winning in the SPL, but the SPL is only half of what we get to see of these pro players. If Ymir has been completely dominant in scrims, and I have to assume it has been because we've been seeing it get banned out, we've been seeing it get priority picks, I think it makes sense that PK, if they know that Awesome Jake is looking for it, might as well take it away, get him off one of his comfort picks. And that's not to say that Ymir isn't strong in its own right. Sure, he's not getting the wins, but he's still making huge plays. We saw Bobby have some moderate success on it recently. I mean, Jake hit a 5-man freeze on a Phoenix defense recently as well. So I like this ban insofar as we're looking to make someone as uncomfortable as possible, put them as far back into their god pool as we can, something they haven't had as much time to practice on. But by that same note, now Jake's going to Fafnir, which is likely just a better pick in general, so maybe PK shot themselves in the foot a little bit.
It has been working out well for them and the Renegades together. Having Fafnir Jingwei, it just feels like a comfort duo lane over there. So Erlang Shen, Amaterasu, all they need is this mid pick, and it's going to be the new Wa, who brings a lot of burst on her own, but a lot of utility as well. When you line up the Renegades right here, even though some of these we haven't maybe seen all around, I mean, look at that, a 0% win rate for a 3% pick rate there for Nuwa. I think that means picked once, lost. So now she's coming in. Is this going to change some of those stats? Do you think we're going to see a jump up to that 50% because of the Renegades?
I think Nuwa into this exact draft might be pretty good, actually. She's one of the best mages for self-peel, and looking at PK's draft, they've got a ton of frontline. Kuzenbo likely going to be running at Nuwa, as is Kakulin and Robin. As long as she times the shiny metal properly, Robin shouldn't be able to immune it with the overhead kick, and it should allow him to at least get into the air and escape out of some danger. But short of that, the rest of Renegades' team is looking for a more dive-centric strategy. Amaterasu, Erlang Shen, Fafnir going to be constantly running at the backline trying to chase down this Thoth. So if Nuwa's left alone, once shiny metal's down, she's likely going down shortly afterward. I like this pickup insofar as it can clean up some kills. It should be able to peel itself for a little bit, but I think there were plenty of other picks that might have been a little bit stronger.
We'll have to see how she translates into it. I mean, up against the Thoth, I think late game we know where that damage is going to be leaning, especially piloted by Paul there. It's going to be difficult, I think, to take down the Raven, the Kuzenbo, Kakulin when it comes to the late game. It feels like the Knights have a lot of control. But, I mean, you're arguing against Amaterasu, Erlang Shen, even the Fafnir to a certain extent. So there's a lot of push and pull between these two teams. But I had asked about the supports earlier. That's what I think we're going to have to see here. The Kuzenbo versus the Fafnir. Whoever makes the difference, I think, takes the duo lane. We'll have to see if they can do it here in game number 1.
Thank you very much, Gormizer. It is Dolson and Aggro on the call. We got Doug working the camera for us. Renegades up against the Knights. Plenty of history in the long lane. Aggro, I think we all voted Knights on this matchup. You at home, I want to see what you guys are voting. Take the poll in chat now, and we'll see your results here in a little bit. I think the only thing that concerned me about the Renegades in my voting was, despite winning last time we saw them against E-United, it seemed more scrimmy. It was down and dirty. It wasn't clean. So that's the only thing that really concerned me about them. So if they're able to bounce back, could be a close one here against the Knights.
I think the post-game interview that Venenu had after that set really told the whole story. He wasn't happy with how they won at all, because it was... You did it a much greater service than it deserved, Dave. It was straight up ugly. That set was...
I can't say
that set was not winning a beauty contest anytime soon. No doubt about that. So we have to see better from the Renegades today, just like we're going to have to see better from United later on today. That performance from either of those teams will not net a whole lot of wins.
Well, here in the mid lane, Venenu's going to pull that one-level lead over Paul. You know, looking at those two gods, I normally think Venenu's going to be on this Thoth, but obviously plays the Nuwa very well there as well. So I think this is maybe more of an interesting game to see how Paul does on this Thoth. You know, the Poseidons, the Hebos, those kind of mid-lane assassin-y hybrid mage-type gods have more been in his wheelhouse here recently. So I think it'll be a fun look to watch him pilot this more long-range artillery mage. Lasbra, a big role to play now for the Renegades, has found his way over to Zapman and found first blood. This is how their games last weekend snowballed out of control, and Lasbra's got the Renegades started early.
And this is exactly what I want to see Renegades do every single game. This style of composition I think is fantastic for them. The Nuwa, I'm still on the fence about, but the rest of the comp looks fantastic to me because it's a little bit more early game slanted. It's the ability to group up early and team fight effectively around this Erlong Shen pick. I just think Erlong is really, really strong right now, and we're not seeing enough of him. I think it fits Lasbra's playstyle perfectly, this early gank sort of jungler who really likes to get the ball rolling, and when he gets a lead is fantastic at pushing that lead. He's a good in-game leader whenever they get ahead. It's when Renegades start to play a little bit scared, start to fall behind, that we see them start to struggle.
Yeah, good luck, Doug. There's too much going on right now. Scary D, a small tick of damage away, but so is SOT if the full Cullen Rage cooldowns are off of cooldown, I suppose. So no more to see in the solo lane just yet, but Neil trying to return some damage just a few moments ago put Barracuda in a bit of an awkward spot. So Renegades, they've swung themselves first here. Now Jake is going to feel a little bit more comfortable. Look for that purple buff invade, and he drops it down. So one place we figured we wanted to keep our eyes on was this long lane. Of course, Barra versus Zap is so fun to watch, but kind of difference in play style as well, maybe between Jake and Neil.
Jake is just going to get in there, though Neil is liable to do so as well. Don't get me wrong. That's a strength of his. At the same time, Solar Patrol in a little bit of trouble over here, but it's actually Fred who's under siege because of Lasbra.
Scary D looking to keep going here. The dash away from SOT, that's enough for the moment, but it was the blue buff invade dropped down by the Knights, so putting some pressure over onto SOT. You think back to that E-United set, lots of emotions, I think, one way or the other. You know, it was fun to watch, I think, from a spectator point of view, chaotic, lots of kills, but think back to the personality, even just the play of SOT showed us in that set against E-United. I mean, fielded himself, some ward taunts here and there. You know, this guy, if he starts to get some momentum going, I think you need to watch out if you're on the Knights. But this is a fun solo lane, I think. You pick the bully in Cullen, able to do this if you're Scary D. Find the big knock-up ultimate. And Amaterasu as well, certainly able to do so. But it's Scary D who has a small lead as of right now.
What you'd expect to this matchup at this point. Ama early because Cullen just doesn't have enough rage generation and isn't going to be able to threaten you with a whole lot of damage right away. It gets out cleared more than you would expect, but at this point now that Scary is clearing the wave more effectively, probably has 2 points in the 1 and 2 points in the 3. So you got double damage there to skip over the 2. Don't need to worry about your rage management early on. You can start to transform pretty consistently, and now you've got your ultimate to get that instant rage boost that you often need in order to keep it up every other wave. This is a very strong point for Scary D. Worth noting, by the way, Paul's start. So he starts in base. You buy boots 2, and then you wait for passive gold gain to start at 0 seconds. that gets you straight to purple boots. You can buy those and still get there for speed XP. But then he backs. Normally you would see a Mage's Blessing in this slot as then MP5 boosting. Instead he goes Warrior's Blessing, which is very interesting because it's very, very easy to proc on Thoth. You can consistently get that extra little bit of damage.
Ooh, big taunt in from Lasbro, but it won't save his life here. Cubo Fred has walked into the back camps there of the Renegades, locked down Lasbro to return a kill now for PK. So Cubo Fred on the board, both junglers striking for a little bit of offensive pressure 5 minutes into the game.
And that's really through this solo lane pressure that Scary D has established very nicely with this Kakala. And this is why you pick this god. It's not to try and solo your lane opposition. That just doesn't happen in the SPL. You're doing it to enable your jungler to invade because you can be there to assist. Invade on the enemy back harpy, Solo Patrol goes and strips away Fred's back harpies, slowing down Fred's farm. Intelligent play by SOT, because the last thing you want is Fred to then go and get his own side of the map and get all that farm for himself. But this pressure is not going to let up. In fact,
right.
Fred might be able to set up a dive here with Scary onto Solo Patrol.
He does have the dazzling offensive SOT, of course, there underneath his tier 1 tower. But you look at the health already in that solo lane tower. I mean, this side of the map could be busted wide open 6 minutes into the game. I love this from the Knights. We've got so much pressure over here on the right. Let's just re-invade and try to keep Lasbro down. That's where a lot of the snowballing happened last week for the Knights, was Lasbro getting off to a hot start and then continuing that farming, getting more kills. So I think anything the Knights can do here to put Lasbro behind just a little bit is obviously very smart here for them. Is there any strategy to keeping up towers longer in the early game? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
curious,
absolutely.
I
I think there is.
kind of bit of strategy.
Yeah, I think because you have the tower where the mechanic is if the tower hits a minion, you get decreased gold from that minion.
Right.
It means that you can deny a lot more gold in that way with the tower up. Even if the wave is being held in the same spot as where the tower was, if the tower's down, then you're not denying any gold. At this point, it gets a little bit less valuable because Solo Patrol should be able to full clear archers with his fully charged 2. So you're not going to deny that many minions worth of gold, but you might deny 2-3 melee creeps worth of gold every wave, and at that point, you're talking a pretty good amount of gold income.
Wow, these Harpies on cooldown. Lasbro has not gotten a free farm over on this right-hand side just yet. Uses the 9 turns blessing. Neil answers with the Kuzenbo ult in return. SOT caught between 3 members of the Knights. Dazzling offensive will not complete charging, and Scary D will finally capitalize on the pressure that he's put over onto SOT. The Knights' plan is clear. It's straightforward, it's bordering on obvious, and the Renegades still haven't had an answer for it. Deep back on the right-hand side of the jungle, another invade gone right for the Knights.
And this is where Renegades starts to look a little bit awkward at times. There's a beautiful stun from Venenu who gets beads from Paul in the mid lane, is where they just feel like they let the enemy team do too much. They give the enemy team too much respect. I mean, Lasbro's behind, but Solo Patrol's there. You've got the rotation over from Venenu coming. You can't just let Paul full charge of Final Judgment and barrel stuff SOT with it. You've got to get in there. You've got to help the man out a little bit, or you gotta make sure that Solo isn't positioning there in the first place. That has this has been a rough early game so far for this right side of the map.
He just walks at him. Scary D just walks at SOT. Decimation over on the right-hand side of the map for the Knights. SOT only has died a couple of times, but Scary D is just starting to run all over this side of the map. Of course, Cubo Fred and some rotations from the rest of PK have been there. The answer to the tower question finally there. 8 minutes, 40 or so seconds into the game, the tier 1 tower will crumble. And that's just so difficult. I mean, you wonder if that's now a mental juggle for the Renegades, wondering, you know, if you have to put so much more focus on that side of the map. I mean, their answer has been to kind of try to assist around these Harpies, but it hasn't worked out just yet. I mean, this is a scary position to be in, with Scary D being 3 levels up over SOT, and now with lack of tower, some good vision from the Knights, he can roam mid, right back to right, and control that side of the map. Lasbro is going to try to get something going over Paul here. Venenu is going to final tap him with his ultimate. Neil is rotated in as well. That's the transformation from Jake. Then looking for the stun. He's got it. A double kill for the Nuwa, but Cubo Fred has put down Lasbro on the back end of the fight. Scary D, he's here as well. That's a level 11 Culcullen by the way, and Venenu learns it the hard way. Barracuda taken down. Zapman snags the kill. The Knights pick up 3. A couple, though, for the Renegades.
That without the rotation from Scary, it would have been a great fight for Renegades. But once this giant Kakulin wanders over from the right-hand side, you're going to be in trouble right away. And that's what I was going to say before that team fight really broke out, is that I don't know that there's a solo laner in the league I want to see with a lead on the other side less than Scary D, because he just has no fear in his body. Not an ounce of fear lives inside Ronnie Belair's body, and he will get in there no matter what, and sometimes to a detriment for his team.
Right.
When you can set him behind, Scary is oftentimes a very good target to keep growing your lead. But in games like this, where Scary gets off to this type of lead, you are in serious trouble, because he's willing to make early rotations like that some other solo laners might not. It was a good window by Renegades, and that's exactly the opposite of what I was worried was going to happen to them, is that when they lose the wind out of their sails, they've got no engine to start up in order to get the boat moving again. They really are just waiting at the whim of the wind, it feels like at times. That was good by them to pick Paul. You knew his beads were down. Lasbra is able to blink over the red buff wall and catch him. That's good work by Renegades to still be the aggressors, but it's just a numbers game at this point, Dolson. Scary is so far behind. He wins every fight for PK.
Lasbra has been trying to ult Cuvo pretty consistently here. Found that one, but now has to retreat as the rest of the Knights are going to rotate over. Scary D full on the chase of SOT in the mid lane as well, so the solo laners are going to make their way to the left-hand side of things here. Won't result in much, but if both solo laners are rotating, we know who's going to feel a little bit more comfortable about it. Only one level behind, though, is SOT. Was a little bit wider a few minutes ago, but has at least kept farming as time has gone on here, and actually still taking the fight and doing a good bit of damage. We know Amaterasu can carry her own. Jake is going to start things off here with the transformation aggro. Maybe the Renegades looking for a fight.
Trying to cash out Paul, but Paul still had enough mana for the dash. Even with the Chronos Pendant, clearly this Warrior's Blessing start for Paul leaves him pretty light in the MP5 department. Gives him a lot more battle-ready tankiness, and like I said, that poke damage can be really relevant for him still.
Lasbro looking for Zapman here. That's the roll away, answered by the blink. The root is there. Zapman up into the sky, buys himself some time. Here comes Paul from the mid lane. Barracuda cannot complete the airstrike. Zapman drops down, drops the Aegis, stays alive. Lasbro knocked up, and he will not get the kill. Zapman does, though. PK turn that one around. Talk about consistent rotations. Great team communication. Renegades thought they had found something, but now it's just a couple more deaths.
Every week, every game, it feels like we'd see this ROM. It just seems to get better and better, doesn't it? We saw Cyclone first pick it pretty much for Radiance and absolutely dominate on it yesterday against Ghost. Right there, Zapman survives when not many hunters would. Jing lives, but doesn't turn around and get a kill and an assist in that moment. It's really what ROM does best. Just buy time up in the air and put out some damage while you're at it.
And, you know, it's a 2-level lead, no, excuse me, a 3-level lead as I'm speaking now for Zapman. It was a 2-level lead prior to that engagement, and this long lane had been pretty much left alone up until that point. Zap had rotated over, helped out with a kill or two, I believe 1, 1, 2 prior to that, now 2, 1, 3, so a kill and an assist in that previous fight. Barracuda was 0, 1, 2, so it's not like there was that wide of a gap, but Zapman on this ROM has just kind of been out farming, building up that XP lead. It was about 800 gold in the net worth department last time I had checked in there. So Zapman had kind of set the table, I think, for a fight that would allow you to turn it around. Of course, the Knights were there in spades to help turn things around as far as the rest of the fight goes, but Zapman able to keep himself alive. We're starting to see sort of more variety in those hunter builds. Kin-size Devos for Zapman. It looks like a little crit for Barracuda. Finally returning, though, to the Pyromancer aggro. Nearly stolen away. Good thought there by Lasbro, but the Knights are going to lock down the objective.
And that's exactly what PK should be doing at this point in the game, is grouping up and forcing fights anywhere on a side lane. Venenu is not necessarily super weak in comparison to Paul. I mean, only a level difference for him. That's the best across the board, except for in support. But this is just not a strong point in Nuwa's character development. This is still early arc Nuwa, She really needs at least 4 items before you start to feel like she's significantly valuable to your team. At 3 items, it's just not enough damage. No percent pen for her, as you would expect. But Scary D just gets to shrug off any Venenu damage at this point in the game. It's just not worth fighting around this Nuwa at all right now for Renegades.
Oh man, Lasbra pinned against the lockers, has his lunch money stolen by Cubo Fred. It's the teleport through from SOT. Fury is up, Oni this time around. So sensing there might be a fight over the horizon, and the Renegades are going to spend teleport to try to get themselves close. SOT picked up Frenzy for his second active overall. Let's see if that maybe pays off here in a second. I think it'd be wishful thinking for the Renegades to head over into the Knights. They'll find a Lasbra on the back now and something.
Toast uses relic on Asti, so he's still toast.
Is any
Comes in, he wasn't anywhere for me who to do that. What is stolen lead? It's in bully on the right side. Mid Harpies, really Lasbra should thank so Scary that his back Harpies are still up, because I think Scary could have just taken the whole right side jungle for himself.
A quick pause, everybody, while we figure out some tech issues back, and then we'll jump into this. If the Napa wins and go 15 minutes here into this game, and let's kind of rewind, figure out how we got there. Lasbra, remember, starts things off well for the Renegades. It's the long lane gank, a couple levels into the game, just a few minutes in, cashes out the long lane of the Knights. But then it is consistent pressure capitalized on by Scary D, Cubo Fred on the right side of the map where things really get rolling.
It's really just that Renegades lost their back timer to PK. PK had that timer, right, and Fred was there on time every time. And Lasbra, poor guy, just has nowhere to farm. And because of the pressure created by Scary's Kukulkan pick, because of the Nuwa pick lacking pressure in that mid lane, Paul's keeping Nuwa pinned in that lane just via poke damage the vast majority of the time, you really don't have a whole lot of options. Jake should be coming over, and he did once, but Solar Ritual died on that rotation, and then the game just felt like it snowballed out of control very, very quickly.
You know, and this is nothing against Bera, phenomenal player, but I'm looking at the stats screen right now. 1,500 damage, 1,545 into the game. So not only has the right side of the map been kind of taken over by the Knights, it is really spread out elsewhere. This Jingwei needs a little extra time, I think, to start to hit her stride. Level 17 is Scary D now. So the Knights feeling, I think, very confident, and as they should be. I think with any objective, wherever they want to start to turn their eyes, they've knocked down a good few of these towers, still some non-respawning gold left on the map in the form of those 4 towers. This would be one of the earlier Fire Giants we've seen, but you wonder if the Knights are in a position where they'd feel comfortable looking towards it.
They should. They're up 8,000 gold at 16 minutes. They are at a breakneck pace at this point. So you're rolling if you're PK. Group up, take every fight Renegades will give you anywhere on the map now, because you are at that point so far ahead. They can't contest you at all.
Cubo Fred, maybe the spearhead here. Barracuda's going to pull back some gold for himself to the tune of 1 tier 1 tower over in the short lane. Scary D is just going to dive on this Jingwei airstrike, used defensively. Lasbra waiting in the wings. He's going to complete his back here, but look at this push from the Knights. Love this response. Knock down the tier 1 and tier 2 tower over here in the long lane, pull some more gold once you know where a couple members of the Renegades are.
And Pittsburgh Knights draft is so obnoxious to play against when they're ahead. Not only do you have this true raid boss Kukulkan that you just can never ever kill in any way, shape, or form unless you're 4v1ing him, and even then I don't really like your odds that much against his Thorns and Soul Eater build. You've got this fantastic poke damage from Paul's Thoth, which just feels really oppressive when he's ahead because it's doing so much damage. Kuzenbo, when he's about the same level as you, he's the same level as Lasbra right now, he's just going to out-trade you, CC you, do more damage than you. It feels impossible to play against. I don't know where Renegades have to go from here. You have to hope that PK really, really botch an engagement pretty badly.
SOT thought the place to go was the mid-Harpies there, and the answer was clearly anywhere else. Anywhere else on the map that the Knights are not, and the Fire Giant pit is where they are at the moment. Paul just playing separator here around the mid lane. FG down to about 5% HP. Jake goes in, unable to steal it away, does some good damage though to Neo. Paul will complete the kill onto the Renegades support. 5 strong with the FG buff. Though some good map juggling from the Renegades are going to get some towers on the back end. But the Knights now full strength, a chance to really push this lead and break open the base.
I like that call from Jake to try and steal that away. He almost got it, and Paul didn't have the ultimate to secure, or didn't use the ultimate to secure, used it afterwards. I like the idea. Jake's life is pretty meaningless in this game at this point. He's level 12, so who cares if he dies? He's not worth any gold.
This is the fight happening by the PK red buff, and Cubo Fred gets the opening kill onto Barracuda. Thorns popped by Neil. Dash away from SOT. Lasbra as well off to the opposite side. Teleport. Trying to move back in by this Phoenix, taken down before it's completed. Venenu doing some good damage to Scary D, but Zapman there as well to play a little bit of extra damage support. Knockup locks down that Fafnir. Beads used for the moment, but Zapman, you can't beads out the damage that Zap is outpouring. Cubo Fred gets a kill elsewhere onto Lasbra, snipes down onto Jake. 3 members of the Renegades MIA for the next 15 or so seconds. Venenu has to pop the Aegis. One final shot will do it, and it's a double for Zap.
Nice and easy for Zap. 4, 1, and 5, level 19. No worries in the world, even though you're getting 2v1 underneath that Phoenix. Scary tanked it up for him. Nearly died, but raid boss, as we mentioned, he's out of there. And then Zap's able to clean up the easy double kill for himself. Renegades right now are just talking about what they're picking game 2. Or maybe what they're eating after the set. They're not talking about this one anymore. I can almost promise you that. At least I hope not, for their mental sake. Because these games happen, and it seems to be happening to Renegades a little bit more frequently than others, where they really just get blown out. That's what we were talking about with the set against E United, where 2 games where Renegades blow E United out, 1 game where E United really blows out the Renegades. You've got to figure out this problem if you're RNG, no doubt about that. But you can't do it in the middle of the game. It's not worth your energy. It's not worth the mental fortitude it would take to have a tough conversation when you're getting stomped out. So right now, you're pre-planning for next game, because I don't think PK is messing this one up.
The siege goes on here. Neil stunned down on the front. Paul just charging up that artillery ultimate from the back. Jake moves himself in, gets the disarm, but it's only on to Paul. Fight a little bit split here. Mid lane, Phoenix goes down. Frenzy used now as the Renegades start to walk their way in. Big taunt there from Lasbra, and a stun down onto a couple, but Cubo Fred will snag the return kill. Over onto Lasbra. Paul trying to retreat here. SOT, he's unable to collapse on that one. Cubo with a double out of the jungle, and the Knights are able to get a Phoenix, and now a couple of kills.
At least if you're Renegades, you've gotten Zap off the board, but that's the silver lining in an otherwise very, very grim-looking game.
Goodbye.
For them. Jake is always gonna die here with that jump direction, but at least it buys as much time as he can. Though without Zapman, I don't think that siege was going to continue for Pittsburgh Knights either way. There's a Gold Fury, strip the jungle a little bit, and get ready to see the Titan fall on your next push. Back here.
I agree. You're talking about lunch, and you got me thinking about... Take a guess at what I'm thinking about now.
Yeah, you think... Well, listen, Dave, if this were game 2, I would tell you are comfortable to order your Chipotle bowl right now.
You think so?
As it's only game 1, I mean, Renegades have shown a propensity to bounce back pretty heavily after tough games. Don't think it's safe to order quite yet. I'll keep you updated, though, Dave. Don't you worry.
Right.
I won't let you have to wait too long for the bowl.
Well, the beauty of the gate code is I tap the keypad on my phone when they call me, and they'll leave it by the door. So maybe between game 1 and game 2. Although, with the speed this one's going, I might not have the time to get up and grab it, so I'd have to watch out for my neighbors taking that one off my doorstep here. Barracuda is now just closing the gap over onto Zapman, who's gone the bow build here, and it seems to be working out here for this ROM. Level 20 at 4, 2, and 6. Unfortunately, Barracuda likely won't have much more time to farm. You touch a toe into what now is the Knights jungle, as the rest of the map has been taken over. You better be ready to fight here. With Fire Giant spawning out in 30 seconds, seems like clockwork here for the Knights. Ward up some of this deep jungle, catch the Renegades as they move in, and hope they don't steal it away.
So I'm thinking along the same lines as what the Renegades are likely doing, about what they should be doing differently in game number 2. I think the main thing, you can't really avoid giving Scary D a good lane matchup if you want to go something teamfight oriented like the Ama. If you want to keep solo Rotro on this style of pick, I do think that you can win that way, but you got to give Ben something that can fight early.
Big fight now for the Knights. SOT dashes himself away, so no more Ama in this fight. Paul stays alive, but not much longer as Lazarus found the opening kill. The Renegades got some fight left in him for sure, but Barracuda's on the wrong end of things here. Cubo, one auto will get it done. Divine on the Robin. Jake trying to burn away Zapman. Won't work out this time. Into the wall goes SOT. Venenu full-on retreat. Ama's actually picked up one onto Zapman, but Cubo has another in this fight. It's SOT against the world. I'm not sure the Knights care. The Titan is exposed, and there's fire minions pouring into the base. Game 1 seems to be over.
Looks like it's in the balance. I don't think SOT will be able to clear out enough of these waves or do enough damage in order to find the win. But Dave does have that dazzling offensive.
No, he doesn't. Okay. He doesn't have it anymore.
Looking like the Bengals dazzling offense right there, eh?
Yep. Fantastic. Listen, all right, you know what? We're not getting started on this one. The Titan whittles away. The Knights take game number 1. SOT tough out of that solo lane. This is maybe the most clinical we've seen the Knights aggro, I think, up to this point. A clear, executable game plan, and I think that really shines a spotlight on this Culcullen, a pick that we've seen a lot, trying to counter out the Ama, trying to counter out this Cthulhu. It's all about that early pressure, but this is maybe the most successful we've seen that pressure capitalized on from what I've seen so far.
A lot of times solo lane pressure picks in the Pro League, you don't see them be that obvious. It's the little things. They don't get off to this massive lead, but it enables their jungler to get off to massive leads, or it means that they can pick a lower pressure jungler without the threat of getting invaded. We often see like little advantages gained by getting the pressure solo. Nothing little about that lead for Scary D. He and Fred absolutely dominated. That was just right side of the map diff in game number 1, no doubt in my mind.
It was, what, 8K, 15 minutes in the game, whatever it was. The Knights absolutely run away with this one. Time to bounce back if you're the Renegades. That's it for game number 1, though. We'll go back to desk to break this one down.
Well, bounce back is what you got to do. I mean, 20 minutes, 24 minutes, I guess I have to give them the credit, right? Where those extra 4 minutes came into play. It was kind of the Knights show the entire time. I think everyone's a little surprised it went that fast, none more so than Bellini. She was really surprised a second ago, I swear it, as she came forward. But Mifflin, I mean, this is honestly kind of similar to how Renegades and United went. Very, very fast game, still went all 3. But it ends up being 24 minutes where, at the end of the day, it was just the Knights kind of showcasing. Like, they were just flexing. I mean, it felt like every muscle got to get shown off there. It was a showcase.
Yeah, I mean, 24 minutes in, you'd have expected Thoth would have taken a little bit longer to come online. Nope, Paul was doing just fine. Zapman's popping off. But, Gore, I'm going to posit a question to you. Do you know what the D in Scary D stands for?
What does it stand for?
It stands for diff, Gore. It stands for scary diff, because this man at 8.5 minutes into the game walked into SOT's tower, took it while SOT was trying to return damage, and then he took SOT's life in a leisurely stroll, walked to the blue buff, took that, walked to the back camps, took that, walked to the enemy speed buff, that's Scary D's as well. This man controlled the game from the smallest lane on the map, and it was so absolutely impressive. Aggro said it already, that these aggressive pressure picks out of Soul Lane don't often get you that kind of return. But Scary D, man, that lead was so oppressive that he was able to spread it all the way throughout the map, and sometimes without even having to go there. Duo Lane was benefiting from it, and he was never on that side of the map.
I also feel like you're not supposed to often see many people go deathless, especially in a Pro League game, but having 2 people on your team go without getting taken down, it's a pretty big accomplishment there for the Knights. And it's hard to, early on, Scary D was, as you put, the difference maker for everybody, but then Cuvo kind of the one that came through, and man, I guess they weren't feeling too stressed either after that first game. It's hard to say that you were. 24 minutes of dominance. Cuvo 11-0-6, Scary D 3-0-11. As that man eventually started getting taken down there for 5-3-8, but had some really good moments. I mean, if you're the Renegades, do you just go back to the drawing board? What fell so catastrophically apart for you?
Man, I think it comes down to draft. It didn't really have the cohesion that they're looking for. The lane that they needed to find pressure, that Soul lane, Amaterasu, got blown out instantly. Lazra got outscaled in the early game by a Raven. It's just tough. If I'm the Renegades, and it's going to sound like a meme, I don't think that I can have that loss weigh on my own mental as a player. I'm walking straight up to my coach like, hey, man, what happened here? What'd you do to us? Because if they think about that match at all, it's only going to weigh them down in game 2. They got to forget about it, find someone else to blame, and move on. I think a new draft is in order. I think a new play style is in order. Or maybe just bring Buko aggression, bring the pressure, and make sure that Scary D doesn't bring the diff.
Well, hey, it's not a grueling 78 minutes that comes through. It's 24 minutes. I think easier to bounce off of there for the Renegades. So bigger for them to be able to do so. Shrug it off, come into game number 2 with a different look. If you're the Knights, just keep doing what you're doing. Whatever you ate before we saw you walk into that room, then do that every day from this point forward, because it seems to be working pretty well for you. So we'll have to see if they can keep it going here in game number 2 as we move towards picks and bans. And Mifflin, I'm trying to run it back. I mean, we saw a lot of just regular meta bans that kind of came through, nothing too specifically targeted. I don't know what to change here, at least for the first 6.
It's tough. You're not going to ban Cucullin. You're not going to ban Thoth. You're not going to ban Robin, because there's so many other stronger actual meta picks that you have to address first. Renegades should likely maybe take out one target ban, get rid of that Robin if you want pressure out of your jungle, maybe draft something pressure-wise into the solo lane, and then potentially try and take away some of PK's picks in their own draft. I know each one of these players on the Renegades could have very easily played every individual god pick that PK played last match, but it's so hard to nail down what went wrong when everything went wrong.
Well, now they're going through it once again. Everything seems to be meta. Oleron Freya taken away by the Knights here, which is actually kind of interesting to me. It feels like Renegades, for the longest time, were ignoring Oleron and Freya anyway, and they were playing Soul because it was comfortable for Barracuda. Jing Wei has definitely been a little bit bigger for them, even though it didn't get to really take flight last game. But here's one that we get to see. Ymir banned instead of the latter half of the bans. It's banned in the top 6 here, so it leaves open a little more for the Knights. Amaterasu's still available, and I'm trying to rack my brain for who that was last time, but at least 3 solid picks, I can imagine. The Renegade's going to be able to scoop up something here, whether it's a Hercules, if they want to grab the Amaterasu, whatever comes through from the Knights.
Yeah, Rom getting picked up for them makes sense. Zapman had a very strong start. He's got decent pressure in lane. The survivability is all right. And that ultimate's going to allow you the time to have your jungler rotate in if you're in any sort of sticky situation. And leaving up Amaterasu, which I would argue likely is a better pick in general, just because of the pressure that it brings not only to the soul lane but to the team fight. You're not worried about it, right? If you're the Knights, you're not worried about what SOT is going to do on that pick, because you know that you have Scary D ready to shut it down completely. Renegades going ahead and take away the Thoth, make sure that Paul doesn't get to reprise his performance. Makes sense to me. If you can't ban it, strip it away.
It's that question, though, how Renegades will make it look in their hands versus how Paul was able to make it look in his hands. They take the Kuzenbo as well, so some of that early aggression is going to be stripped away from the Knights here. Although, from my memory, that Kuzenbo helped. The ROM was good over there. But I'm still a little more worried about this solo lane overall. Amaterasu's still available. We've seen Scary D on that pick just be ridiculous overall. And they get the Robin back. I mean, so far, 2/5 of the same team for the Knights, and while some of it's been stripped away, it's 2 very successful fifths of that. 40% that they ran with ease through all of it. And an 11-0 Robin is definitely something you can run back happily.
And Robin into Thoth is such a good matchup for him. The pressure that you're going to be able to bring and match it with this Hee-Ba likely going into the mid lane, there's going to be a ton of damage potential. If this Thoth dashes down, Robin hits you with the Prana Onslaught or even just the root, Hee-Ba's going to hit you with Crushing Wave. He doesn't need to use Water Hands. He doesn't need to use Water Knock-Up. He doesn't need to use the Carpet because the damage output is already on the board. I think that it's going to be a very hard matchup in mid for this Thoth to really get off the ground running. But I like this adjustment in the Soul lane for Renegades, or potentially for the support role, and we see Kuzenbo head over to solo. This tier, if it is in the short lane, should be able to sustain up much more easily. I like to equate tier to the god that if you make it to level 6, Power Cleave's heal is so hugely impactful that you'll very likely never die in a 1v1, or you put it in the 408's hands and pray that he's hitting multi-man Fearlesses in duo lane and setting up for a phenomenal performance for Barracuda.
The Renegades are one of the few teams that can put us into living in such a weird world where I see Kuzenbo tier and I think, oh yeah, 408 tier and Kuzenbo solo, even though that's just not the way teams are running it. Honestly, I feel like the Renegades might not run it that way either, but that's one of those that we just have to leave until we're in-game to see, because the Renegades could do anything. The shuffle is insane as we look at some solo lane gods here from the Renegades. RDO, notably banned out. Kind of odd. We don't get to see her too often on this screen, period, let alone in the bans. Kakulin makes sense after what we saw last game. And it's the Jingwei and the Erlang Shin on the other side, both targeted bans towards the Renegades. And so hunter-wise, Barrett's going to have to find something else that he's comfortable on. Not too difficult, but going up against the ROM is going to be difficult.
Yeah, it goes back to the next safest pick. It seems like Barracuda's still got that same god pool from Phase 1. Well, Jingwei's the safest hunter. If that's taken away, we'll go to Hachiman, the second safest hunter. And he's got a lot more boxing potential than Jingwei. The stun is going to be very strong with the EI Jutsu, the ability to poke from a range with his steroid, and the Heavenly Banner to just help out not only with long-range poke, but with mana sustain and attack speed on objectives. Hachiman is a very strong pick. And the CC immunity is going to be hugely impactful. Robin rotates in your lane, blink roots. Just kidding, I'm on a horse. I'm already back in my tower. I think it's a very good pickup, but I would have liked to see him pick something a lot more aggressive if it is a tier, or even if it is the Kuzenbo, to match what is brought by your support.
Well, you want to talk about aggressive. Look at the Knights now. They lock in Set Achilles at the very end. And the thing that makes this so difficult is that Paul has liked Set in the past, but Robin has to go in the jungle. Hebo feels like he has to be mid if Robin's jungle. There's such a huge shuffle that can come over here. So maybe Set solo, maybe Achilles solo. We'll have to figure it out when they get into the game. The Knights, though, if there's anything this brings, it's aggression. The Ratatosker, someone we don't get to see often on the other side here. I want to talk about him. How do you feel about this squirrel making his way in?
I love Ratatosker a lot. The argument to be made right now is which Acorn is it going to go? Likely going to be Jungle Ratatosker. I mean, it's pretty obvious looking at the draft. So what is he going to go for? Is he going to go for the crit Acorn and potentially just win a game off a 400 damage crit at 3 minutes in? Or is he going to go for the Acorn Blast Acorn and make it a lot more easy to confirm your CC, set up for your team, and still get a lot of damage? This Ratatosker pick has a lot of high-end potential, but it also has a very low-end as well. If he does go the crit Acorn and he just doesn't get lucky, he could very easily lose the game. If he goes the Acorn Blast Acorn and falls behind, it's going to be very hard for him to want to move up and look for that engagement. This Ratatosker pick is spicy.
That stun setup could be big, but right now it's how the Renegades will deal with the aggression. The Knights seem to have the pedal to the metal. We'll see if they can continue that here in Game 2.
For game number 2, the Renegades a chance to bounce back. The Knights with a chance to take this one home. Dulcet and Aggro still on the call. Doug still working the camera for us. And Aggro, I think the correct and proper place to kind of spring off here is with that Ratatosker in the jungle. The Acorn changes made us wonder if we would start to see a little bit more of him. The answer was not really, but we do see it here for Lasbra.
I agree with Mifflin's real tension point on this Rat is which Acorn direction is he going to go. I still think that the extra stun on the more Acorns on the Acorn Blast is just the best way to go on the character. It just brings you a lot more consistency, gives you some more guaranteed ranged CC, and still gives you a lot of extra damage. At the pro level, if you're dashing into the vast majority of your damage, you're just going to end up dying more often than not.
And I think, as spicy and as fun as Rat is going to be to follow along with, the Knights, I think, threw me through a little bit of a loop there. You see Hebo locked in. I'm putting my money on that being Paul the majority of the time. And then they lock in a Set a little bit later on, and admittedly my mind didn't really change, but now we're in here in game. It's going to be the Set mid for Paul. Q on the Hebo out of the jungle. What do you make of where they land?
Now Robin in support as well for Neil. I think it can work. I think this draft can work for PK. They played this Set mid before. It just, when Paul gets ahead and feels like he can make plays, he's going to make plays. This dude is just a mechanical monster. So putting an assassin in the mid lane is risky, but against someone like a Thoth who's not going to be able to punish you super early, it does make some sense. It's a little bit scarier against Ratatosker in the jungle because it's so easy for him to rush over to his Thoth's defense at any moment's notice. But you've got a lot of potential hyper carries. here for PK. Zap getting ahead is potentially game over. Paul getting ahead is definitely game over. You've got Fred on this Hebo that could be very explosive. I'm interested to see what Neil's going to do on this Robin, but I do think that this kit can work as a support. You've got a root, you've got a slow, and your ultimate is that mini Sunder effect that can make your teammates deal more damage. It's not the ideal support, but I don't think it's a completely preposterous idea.
Now, this is not to say that Hebo does not do a lot of damage, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you about Hebo being the only source of magical damage here for the Knights?
It's not good poke damage, which means that you can afford to just accept the fact that you're going to lose 1 to the Hebo all in, but you shouldn't lose more than that. I'm not worried about it. I should be worried about Neil, though, and he should be worried about playing Robin, because that's still assassin base stats, and you're still dead as soon as Jake pushes you.
Well, my goodness. They find a kill in the long lane again. That's the Renegades. It's Jake this time setting that one up and knocking it down. Barracuda there for the assist. Immediate purple buff invade. Could not have been worse timed if you're the Knights, or better timed, of course, if you're the Renegades. And this is in a lane where, remember, Zapman, before even really receiving all that much pressure, despite the early gank, pulled 1-2 levels ahead of Barracuda in game number 1. So giving Barra that extra little leverage here early, I think absolutely pivotal for the Renegades.
Hachiman's one of those picks that can really push leads effectively because of his chase down potential. Doesn't have to worry too much about the ROM ult bringing a whole lot of survivability because he's got long range damage that can confirm from a distance with that Heavenly Banner or that mounted archery. So even if Zap goes up into that ultimate, say under tower line, it doesn't mean that Zap can't, or that Barra can't end up chasing him down. I like the Hachiman pick. We haven't seen it in a little bit, but I still think he's a very playable hunter.
Barracuda's going to snag an assist early on that Hachiman. Remember, a lot of the pressure, effectively all of it, was deep in the Renegade side of the jungle, right here where we see Cubo Fred staking his claim on his own side of the jungle here for game number 2. Most of that born out of solo lane pressure from Scary D on that Kulkullen into the Amaterasu. You look at the Achilles versus the tier matchup, a couple picks I think that want to bully one another there in that lane. I'm not sure we'll see the same level of tilt's not the right word, but if you're literally looking at it as a scale, I'm not sure SOT will be climbing uphill quite as much this game.
Tier is just one of those picks that can afford to ignore you pretty easily and just start to out-clear and then out-rotate you. I imagine that's what SOT is going to do in this matchup because Achilles, even though he is a lane bully, doesn't have very good lane clear. You really want to take short, bursty trades with Achilles, use his sustain to your advantage, and then just continually start to punish the enemy once you get enough kill potential with your ultimate. Tier doesn't have to worry about that.
Jake is going to blink through here. Zapman on the retreat. Double stun beads out by Zap here, but Jake pushes him right back in. Neil assists in the death of his AD carry there. Jake setting up another kill here. Aggro, we have not seen a lot of this. We have not seen a lot of these 2v2 matchups in the long lane kind of spiraling out of control here as of late. I mean, think back to opening of Phase 1 into Phase 2. I mean, there was a little bit more of this juggling support ADC matchup going on. But it sort of slowed down maybe as of late here. But Jake reopening up the door to that conversation, getting his second of the game.
Well, you know you're not in any real threat of getting ganked by Hebo jungle early on, so that's not a concern. Kind of lets you hit the gas pedal on that left-hand side, and as soon as the Robin support falls behind, he's going to have trouble keeping up.
What's going on here? Cubo Fred just walks at Lasbra, and there's the damage. It wasn't all that much of a gank. He just sort of walked in towards the Ratatosker. Plenty of damage. Crushing Wave was used, so that's where most of it came from. Paul is going to rotate over as well, and down goes SOT. The Knights pick up a couple in a jungle skirmish.
And that's the worst thing that can possibly happen if you're Renegades, because all you're fighting should be on the left-hand side. That's where your lead is. You've got a 2-0 Kuzenbo. Very unfortunate for Barracuda that both those last hits have gone Jake's way. I think he would have very much preferred to have those under his own belt. But this is where your pressure is, on this left-hand side. And Fred, sure, you catch Lasbra a little bit unaware, blink in, knock up, crushing wave, you're dead. That's a tough spot for Lasbra to be in. But then SOT just kind of moseys on in to the jungle. Is this seat taken? You're right in the middle of 3 of you, and then they just collapse and instantly kill him. That's just a bad decision by SOT to walk in when you know that there were that many members in the jungle and you know you're tier with boots. You're not exactly the scariest threat on the map.
Oh, the game plan, not only of for the Renegades, the game plan of putting Neil and Zap behind has worked out. But then the Knights doing their due diligence and keeping Lasbra behind. It was a 2-level lead for Cuvo Fred, now is shrunk down to about 1 as Lasbra's been able to come back from base. And unless my eyes are deceiving me, which they very well could, it's Thistlethorn Acorn, so a little bit of extra debuff there out of the Ratatoskr in the jungle.
This is what I expected with this Acorn choice. This is just the more consistent one. You still get this great damage effect with that debuff, but it's not as risky.
Oh, Lasbra is going to need some help debuffing Cuvo, Fred, and Neil here. This is going to be difficult. Neil on the Robin, I'm going to be assuming that's Cuvo after what we saw consistently in Game 1, but I just have to remind myself that's support Robin here in Game number 2. And the strategy is the exact same. Copy, paste, flip the sides, immediately back to those Harpies. Goes Neil, goes Cuvo. And you watch how that small lead ballooned. More of it. Here's SOT rolled over by Kibo. We're 7 and some change minutes into this game, almost getting to 8. Not even a full, what I assume is going to be a Bancrofts for Cuvo, and he deletes SOT.
And Fred's just been able to get off to this great lead, and you should never have the Hebo be further ahead than the Ratatoskr early game. That's actually illegal, if you ask someone.
Nice snipe there from Venenu, gets rid of Neil, so a small pickup there for the Renegades as the red buff is dropped down. Skirmishing happening all over the place. That's what we figured, or this is where maybe rather we figured the Renegades would be doing more of their fighting, where this lead is built out of. Neil off to a very difficult start here. This Robin support now 0 for 2, hasn't quite found the value I think PK were looking for just yet.
Not quite, and pretty greedy by Neil to not fire off that Mystic Rush. Probably didn't hear Venenu channeling his ultimate with how far away he is, but I think it's a pretty safe bet that he's going to be firing that right away with how low you are. I think that could have been an avoidable death there for Neil, but at the end of the day, Renegades walk away with the red buff invade, even though it's split 4 ways. Got to start to keep putting pressure on that red buff. You get that timer now. You don't want to take any fight on the right side of the map. SOT is a non-factor now at level 8. He's in trouble right now. In fact, he's potentially just dead, though good blink is going to get him some space, but Kingslayer should be enough to seal his fate. This is where you just don't want to be fighting if you're Renegades. And this one's not on the Renegades, it's on SOT for proxying at that point. But you've got to do this. This is good by Renegades. Put pressure on the opposite side of the map and de-incentivize PK to continue to bully SOT.
Now how interesting, not in the build for tier, is this Relic Dagger, but does that raise your eyebrows at all that that is the first item that SOT is locked in here? I mean, Teleria boots immediately into Relic Dagger. We figured early that this movement speed was going to be a big part of that build. But his Relic Dagger kind of first big item overall makes some sense.
This was the flavor of the month on tier when he was popular at the beginning of the season, just this full movement speed, and this build got nerfed pretty heavily. Every single item got some movement speed taken off of it, but it still makes you faster than everyone else. It's not as fast as it used to be, but it's still faster, and that's really all that matters.
Scary D finally getting ganked now by Lasbra. SOT hoping to finish off the kill. A little bit of healing, but not enough. Lasbra will pick up his first of the game, and that'll help close that gap. It was a 3-level lead. It is right now a 3-level lead. Will get a little smaller for Scary D over in that solo lane. And now in back-to-back games, that solo lane tier 1 tower has fallen before that 10-minute mark. So the Knights have calculated and placed their aggression consistently so far here throughout that set. Still, though, a small lead, but that has shrunk over in the long lane side of things. Zapban is pulled right back to even level-wise. Mid lane tilting towards Venenu here a little bit. But it seems like Cuvo, not intentionally, has slowed down. I mean, shot out of a cannon there for a couple of minutes. You just wonder when this Hebo is going to find his next target.
It's really only a matter of time. He's not getting any weaker from this point. I would argue that Lasbra, not necessarily getting weaker, but Zap pretty close to near his peak strength. Zap is in trouble right now, and that's putting it mildly.
He's going to land down. No beads this time around. Barracuda will not finish off the kill. It's a killing spree for Jake, Bera gets himself his 3rd assist. Hasn't picked up one of the 3 kills just yet. So Jake continues to grow. Bera as well is going to pull himself a lead. But of course wishes he would have had maybe a couple of those kills on himself here. Paul taken somewhat low. We haven't had a chance really to check in on this mid lane. The action's been happening on either wing of the map. Venenu's pulled himself a couple levels ahead of this mid lane set. Now just 1, despite Paul off to a 101 slash line.
Just the ability to keep clearing safely and from a distance is the difference maker. And Blink in, Renegades do secure the Gold Fury.
Neomano, though, without the ultimate now. Cubo Fred has picked up the kill. The turnaround damage is there. Scary D rotates into the fight as well. 3 levels ahead of SOT, who's trying to help his team escape. Jake will pop the ultimate, get beneath the tier 2 tower there. So it's Fury down for the Renegades, but they've lost a couple.
This is going to be great news for Paul because look at all that farm that is just waiting for him on the right-hand side. A full wave, don't mind if I do. You're blue buff, sure, why not? Back harpies if I feel like it, why not? I can go for basically whatever I want, and then they could go towards Pyromancer if they so choose.
Oh, Neil takes so much damage from Lasbra, but Laz doesn't have the damage to finish him off. Up to the branches he goes. Will he get the execute over onto Neil? Instead disengages. Jake was there, but Laz is so low, no chance to follow up.
It's just absurd to me that we're 12 minutes in, and that's the 2nd rat ult we've seen, and there's only been 1 aggressive one. And isn't it kind of weird how that resulted in a guaranteed kill? Like, that's what Ratatosker is there to do. It's to ult your side lanes and insta-kill people because his base damage is bonkers. Lasbra's just been so worried about catching up in farm because Fred has gotten off to such a great start that we haven't seen Las really use this Ratatosker for what it's for. I don't think Rat is this precipitous drop-off into the mid to late game like some people will talk about. He's not completely worthless post 23 minutes, but it's not his most effective point in the game. There's no doubt about that. You've got to be a little bit more effective in where he's going to be at his best.
More fighting in the mid lane now as Venenu will use his Aegis to stay alive. Paul pushed back in, able to get out of tower range, but Neil is the one juggling it now. Interesting, to say the least, from the Robin, as Venenu will pick up a kill down onto Neil. 0-3-2 out of the support role for Neil on this Robin. A couple of assists are the saving grace for what has otherwise been a tough start for Neil.
Not been the best experiment for this Robin support, no doubt about that. But overall, it's really a lot of this deficit is because Jake has ended up getting so many last hits in support. If those are assists, it's probably only about a level deficit for Neil, and you see a bigger gap in Barracuda and Zapman's separation. But because Barra has gotten a little bit unlucky, I think that last kill onto Zap where he rolls into the jungle and Barra uses his ult to catch up, you know Zap's dead in that spot. I think if you're Jake, you kind of have to let Barra get that kill. And I'm usually one that says last hits don't really matter that much, you should just take them where you get them, and that's how it goes. But when you're so sure that guy is dead and you've already gotten the vast majority of the kills early on as a support, not to say Jake won't carry, because he has, but you want to give it to the ADC.
Goodbye, Venenu, as Scary D has found the execute now beneath the tier 1 tower. Ultimate used by Jake. 3 members of the Night tier to play support. Pyromancer locked down just a few moments before that. Barracuda chance to show his strength against Zapman. The big 1v1 boxing match won't really tilt one way or the other. Barracuda has used his ultimate here, so a small advantage maybe, aggro. If a fight were to break out, the Knights would have a little extra damage off of the top end there. The Renegades, you know, we haven't harshed on them at all, really. I mean, maybe nitpicking some of what Jake has, but it's really been this. Lasbra opening up fights with his ultimate that we haven't seen, that we now might be able to see just a little bit. Zapman uses his ultimate up to the skies. He goes down, slams Lasbra, but the damage not enough, and Paul has picked up the kill onto Barracuda as Neil will escape from this one somehow. Now Lasbra full on retreat, crushing wave in on the chase. The knockup not there from Fred. The Renegades, I think, felt thrilled to start that fight and are sad at the way it went. Down 1 as Barracuda takes a tumble.
And Barra's lead that was so valuable to the Renegades is now pretty much neutralized. And that is the worst case scenario for the Chaos side. That was your only side of the map that you had a massive advantage because Paul is caught up in mid. He's only down about 400 gold to Venenu right now, but he's got the priority in the 1v1 potential because it's assassin versus mage. You like the assassin's odds pretty much every time. And now, I mean, Barra's still ahead. Excuse me, he's not ahead in net worth anymore. He's actually down to Zapman. And that's where this conversation of last hit's normally not a big deal. The fact that all 3 of those kills in the duo lane go Jake's way ends up mattering quite a bit now.
Right, 1 here or there, maybe not, but 3. That's a swing, to be sure, for Barracuda. Paul feeling a little bit confident for good reason. Gonna get the ultimate out of Barracuda. Barra did have his beads if need be, but it's been these small advantages that the Knights have continued to find that have put the Renegades on the back foot. Gold-wise, really somewhat even here. But this is the scary part where the Knights start to group up, push you out of your own jungle, and look towards a Fury.
Scary D is just such a threat in comparison to what Solar Troll is going to do in these team fights. I don't think PK really has to respect this tier at all at this point in the game, and PK have to really make sure, their Renegades rather have to really make sure that they know exactly where Scary is and what Scary's doing at all times, because he is that far ahead in the build. He's 4 items deep already, and sure, so is SOT, but his items are much cheaper than that of Scary, and he's going to do a lot less damage, that's for sure. Solar Troll is really there as a setup man. Lasbra at this point not going to be the one-shot machine anymore. He's going to have to earn it a little bit more. He's there as a primary setup man. You're looking at Venenu now for Renegades. The ball is in his hands all of a sudden. I think it's going to be on Ven to have some pretty massive team fights alongside his front line doing great work. Jake's really got to cash in on these kills, man. He's got to be able to be a force in the front line.
He has, up to this point, 302, affecting all but one of the kills for the Renegades so far. It's a good pushback, though, for the Renegades. Start to poke into the Knight side of the jungle a little bit. You've gotten Zapman down to half of his HP. Won't be able to swing the kill just yet here. You look over at Scary D as well. I mean, there's not much to fight for over on the Fury side of the map. You got 3 minutes, 45 seconds till that one's back up. And you've got a level 18 Achilles that's just going to continue pushing down this tier 2 tower and might just get it for free.
Solar Troll has kind of been on tour a little bit. He's on this left-hand side. He was at purple. Now he's still roaming back. So he's not catching up in farm anytime soon. He's got to make a play.
Maybe a tier beneath the tier 1 tower. It isn't. Takes a look at it. If nothing else, the pressure there of this tier will knock down that tier 1 tower as Scary D continues to push down the tier 2 over in the solo lane. It's another invade for Paul here, down onto the red buff. Blink forward from Jake. Finally some action now from the Renegades to start things off onto Neo. Blink right back through as well from SOT. No kills. Good peel from the Knights to stay alive, but there is maybe a rotation around the backside.
All the while, Scary gets more farm. SOT 3-way splits half a wave, and Lasbra gets soloed by Scary. I just don't understand the map macro in this spot. It just doesn't check out to me. Lasbra is going to lose effectiveness as the game goes later. Solar Troll will not. Solar Troll is going to do the same thing now that he's going to do later, and that's be really fast and push people with Fearless. His damage in farm level is really not that relevant, so that's why they want to keep him moving around the map, but he needs to earn some tankiness. That is going to be important for him. Lasbra is near, it's sunset for him on where he's going to do the vast majority of the damage for this team. You've got to be involved in the fighting, so sticking him in an unwinnable 1v1 where at least SOT shouldn't die in that 1v1 because of how much speed he has and how much sustain he has. I just don't understand that setup for Renegades. I just think it did not make sense to me.
That was my concern. It's a level 20 Achilles now. Everyone else on the Renegades 17 or lower. So the tier 2 tower stands, but the lead has now fully peaked for Scary D and not even full items just yet. Hugo Fred, though, looking for some damage with the assistance of the rest of the Knights. It's a 21-minute fire giant if that's where PK starts to look here. Barracuda taken down, half HP, pulled back 1 level on his counterpart in Zapman. So the tug of war in the long lane has continued here. But this is just the sense now of the Knights have enough of these large leads and only 1 or 2 rolls maybe that they can just group and really pile on some of these towers.
And like I was talking about in Game 1, I think that this is where Renegade sometimes struggles, which is where they lose some wind out of their sails. They get a little bit caught out, and then who's going to start them back up? Who's going to be the initiator? Who's going to find them the fight that can get them back in the game? Because even though it feels really, really bad for them right now, and it feels like PK has all the momentum in the world, this is a totally fine deficit to be behind at this point in the game, at least in gold. XP is a concern, but that's only getting better from here because Scary can't get any further ahead than he already is. It's less than a 2,000 gold lead. You can win this game if you're Renegades, but it's not going to happen waiting for the game to come to you. You've got to get out there and grab the bull by the horns, so to speak, and we just haven't seen that consistently from this team when they aren't already in the lead.
Agra, I'm ready to run through a brick wall. I mean, that's all I needed to hear to swing this one back in our favor. Maybe the Renegades with a little listen in feel the same, but it's always scary when Scary D is in behind you, as he's reached, or has been rather, at that level 20 mark. Here's a chance for the Renegades to kind of swing their destiny back on their side in this one. Oni Fury springs forth. Maybe get some damage onto Neil to start off. Still haven't seen huge value out of the Robin, so maybe a point for the Renegades to capitalize on. Just have to keep your eyes on where this Achilles is. For the moment, himself, Cubo, Fred are looking towards Lasbra. Plenty of damage onto the Ratatosker as SOT is going to return some onto Cubo. So some good damage now to the solo lane for the Renegades to turn things around. Up and over goes SOT. Lasbra to the sky as well. Where does he slam down? Countered out by Zapman for the second. Buys himself some time. Venenu dancing around. Receives some damage. Scary D does not, but Neil sure does. SOT finds his first kill of the game. Venenu melted down by Paul. It's a crushing wave from Cubo. Fred right back in as Lasbra tumbles as well. Scary D with the double. Jake trying to outduel Zapman, but the execute for the triple kill from Scary D has something else in mind. The quadra execute. Scary D capitalizes on a great early game. D aside 23 minutes in.
And this is just the pick of the litter now for Pittsburgh Knights. Get the Oni Fury back, reset, and set your way towards Fire Giant. Renegades just look like they're on such different pages, Dave, that I'm not even sure they're reading the same book right now. Solar Patrol is off in left lane with Lasbra, but Lasbra needs to get up and over the top to try and catch out Zap. That could not go any better because PK is really down a support in this game. Neil did nothing that team fight. He didn't ult or horrific emblem. He blinked in and died. So you are starting that fight 5v4 if you're Renegades, and you got quadra killed and it wasn't close. I think that speaks a lot of volumes to how separated this game has been. And remember that they came into that fight not down 6k. They didn't get quadra killed by a dude who's 4,000 gold above them individually.
Right.
They got quadra killed by a team that was up 2,000 gold and lost their support instantly. Renegades just look incapable of team fighting properly right now. This has been a definite regression for this team the last two performances, despite the win against EU United, because like we covered at the very beginning, it's been so ugly. This has not been a good day for Renegades at all.
Well, let's see if Scary D can one-up himself, go for the full 5. I'm not sure the Renegades are going to put themselves in that position. Fully restocked ultimates-wise as well, as the right side Phoenix will go down. And you bring that up. It wasn't a 6 or 7k lead for the Knights. It is now right around that 8-9k mark. It's just going to get worse as the towers and the Phoenixes fall down. A little bit more linear, as Finch likes to say, though. The Phoenix defenses and those gold and XP gaps starting to shrink a little bit, though still looking to complete some items as Neoma and Paul out of the mid lane. So the Renegades, you know, if there is a chance for you to get back into this game, maybe it's kind of the funneled-in fight where Scary D can't wrap behind you.
Left side Phoenix is the call, and a little bit of a late delayed back coming from a couple members of Renegades. It's not going to take PK long to chew through this.
He's going to use his ultimate into the back. Zapman, though, always quick on the trigger. Up he goes, and nearly down goes Neil. Is going to stay alive. Paul is going to turn around the damage onto Barracuda. Neil continues his onslaught away from this fight. Lasbra in on the chase, unable to get the kill just yet. Now Paul 2v1ing. Scary D gets rid of the rat. SOT being looked at. A double kill for Scary D. A 6-kill swing in the last couple of minutes out of this solo laner. Decimation Scary D stands for solo diff according to Mifflin, and we're seeing it here in game number 2. A chance for the Renegades to defend, but it's Venenu, Jake, the last two alive. Titan being looked at, 5 members with the FG buff. Scary D pushed back into the fountain. Jake has more kills than the rest of his team combined. Adds another onto Scary D.
4, 1, and 2 for him. The Gem of Isolation there in tow just to try and help out. Venenu walks around the corner, finger in the air, and goes, oh, hey guys, that was a prank. The whole, like, I'm gonna hit you with evade and punish thing, it was all a joke. Do not take it seriously. PK, do not take kindly to that joke and chase him down with these.
Barracuda on the respawn, Lasbra SOT a few seconds behind that, otherwise the Knights likely would have just pushed in and looked themselves for the end there. I mean, that's game-saving from Jake, right? I mean, if they don't get that kill, although not, massive, it would have been a full Knight onslaught there. Might have just ended things here, but now you start to look towards the last minute of this Fire Giant buff. The Knights, I think, a very calculated team, won't overextend here with the last minute of things, maybe pick up some ward coverage. Not sure, though, if that gives Renegades enough of that wind in their sails to move forward and contest this next Fire Giant.
Dave, let's do a quick exercise. Close your eyes for me if you could.
I don't want to exercise anymore. Can I?
Right,
is it brain? Is it mental or physical?
Yeah, mental. Don't worry.
Okay, all right, fine.
Please, I still can't stand up properly after leg day the other day. Can you tell me who the lowest player damage in the whole game is?
Close my eyes. I mean, I'm trying to think here. SOT.
No. He is above Neil Ma, though only by about 100 damage or so. Neil is second to the bottom. The Robin who has gotten one shot in every fight but the last one. It's actually Lasbra on the Ratatosker.
Oh right. I forgot.
Below
Never mind. I can't say that.
Nice save. Very, very nicely done. Look, this has been a rough day at the office for Renegades' right side of the map. I don't know if their practice leading up to this week wasn't good. I don't know if they just didn't get good sleep last night. But this is like they all ordered the wrong thing at a restaurant and all got food poisoning level performance from them. And that's what makes it really frustrating is that when Renegades lose, they lose hard. They don't squeak out a loss, they don't push you to the brink very often. They either steamroll you or they earn a close victory. That does happen for them. They can grind out some wins. It's not like all their games are 25 minutes. Right. But they just have this Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde sort of situation where there are just days where the Renegades may as well not have shown up. And this is just one of them. And I can't imagine being a Renegades fan and feeling very good on days like this because it is tough, man, when a team that you're rooting for or being a player for them where you just, take Venenu, for example. I think Ven has had a fine game on the Thoth in the mid lane. It's just these side lanes have completely fallen apart on him today, and that's not ideal.
I mean, you look at, United from Phase 1, that was the most difficult team to lock down, right? You didn't know which one you were getting on any given day. That may shift over to the Renegades here for Phase 2. We've seen some high highs, but some low lows out of this squad as well. Looking for some consistency. Still a chance, of course, always the big chance for these guys to get back into these games. As time goes on, XP, gold, that'll be shrinking as far as impact. This is a big fight now. The Knights go up, Lasper goes down. He's found Cubo, who immediately crushing waves away from the engagement, but low health on Laz, low health on Jake. Zapman looking to chase down Jake on this Kuzenbo. SOT is taking a tumble elsewhere. Another kill in this fight for the Renegades. Gap closing ultimate now from Scary D. Venenu left alone. Paul, everyone from the Knights getting in the kill feed. It's a double for Paul to break that trend. Renegades up against just Lasbra trying to save the game.
And Lasbra is on the Ratatosker. I don't think it's going to happen, Dave. A very, very breezy victory for PK in this one. Maybe Neil wanted to throw a wrench in their plans a little bit with the Robin pick, but it just doesn't seem to matter with how the rest of the map was playing. Scary D just woke up a man possessed today. I don't know if you saw his little waddle in or whatever.
The walk in, right?
Yeah, that walk in really set him up nicely, man. It was easy going for him on that right side today.
Easy going for the Knights, boys. You see it there in the post-game camp. Yeah, I mean, look, I wake up, I see Scary D walking into, Cuvo, excuse me, walking into a room like that. I'm pretending I forgot to set my alarm, right? No chance I show up.
Yeah, I'll take the fine. You know, I just don't want to see what happens if we actually show up on the battleground of the gods. Look, all joking aside, Renegades are clearly a good SPL team. They're clearly comprised of good players. I just don't know. Games like that signify that team environment, mental game needs a little bit more work for me, because that was just not what this team is capable of. We're not even in the same area code as far as that goes. It was not a good day for the Renegades. They've got to find a way to do better than that.
It's the best way, I think, of describing this one. Down day for the Renegades, but a big up day for the Knights. 2-0 over RNG to start off this Saturday of SPL action. That's it, though, for set number 1. We'll go back to the desk to round it out.
Well, it's going to be difficult to talk about anybody other than Scary D. And so, Mifflin, what I've gone for you is added, deadly, diligent, dastardly. There's a few other Ds that you can add in there for Scary D. And everything about what he was able to bring in both Game 1 and 2 was just great for the Knights, although this time around he had a lot more support. I mean, Paul goes undying, 8-0-7. Cuva only has the 1 death total. Neil is he was the sandbag for them while they're training in this, and it didn't even slow him down.
Yeah, it just looks so bad for the Renegades. The Knights look so good on the flip side of it as well. Well, I mean, it's hard not to say Scary Diff again, because my man got a quadra kill and a gold feud.
Yeah, that does help.
Everything just looks so good from the Knights, and I think Agar really hit the nail on the head in that Renegades are a team that can perform at an incredibly high level, and we didn't even get to see a glimpse of it today, just because they got so outclassed. This time it did look a little bit better. It took them about 18 minutes before PK really started to establish a lead for themselves. I think it was pretty even gold and XP-wise at that point, but even then it felt like PK were just in control of the pace from minute 1.
It was a good first few minutes for them. It was pretty much until, not even until Scary D got into the fight. They just seemed to snap. I feel like Neil maybe isn't going to be as aggressive early on. Robin, not known to be super tanky as an assassin over there for the support, so maybe that did pull back that early game just a little bit for them. But just as quickly as it seemed like it could have gotten out of hands for the Knights, they not only stripped it away from the Renegades, but got so far ahead that, well, Scary D did Scary D things again. It's just good from them. Quadra kills, not often found, especially in the Pro League, so getting 1 is already amazing. But the Knights then being able to turn a full game around. Scary D has a great slash line. Again, Paul goes undying. I think everybody just is looking good and feels happy for the Knights there as they solidify themselves in 5th.
Yeah, that really does honestly break them apart from the pack. Now we got to look at Renegades as this lower-tiered team in my eyes, especially considering the backslide we've seen in the last couple of weeks. They've really been struggling on the tail end of part 2 of this phase. It's looking rough for them, but I trust that they will be able to grow. They've got a very active coach that's been able to help them out so much in not only their planning, but recouping their mental game. I'm not too worried. If you're a Renegades fan at home, you shouldn't be worried either. I'm sure we'll see them come back around next week.
It feels very weird because, we always talk about it as maybe being like the top 3 teams, the middle 2 teams, the bottom 3 teams, but it kind of feels like the top 4 teams, the Knights, and then everybody else below them. They're very solidly holding on to that middle slot, and honestly, they seem to be starting to punch up, so I'd be scared if I'm in the top 4, but who better to talk about that and how this set went than the Knights themselves. He went undying this set, so we're going to go down and hear from Paul.
That's right. Paul is with me. Paul, big congrats. The 2-0 for you guys here today over the Renegades. I want to pick up right where Gormizer left off there. 2-game loss streak for you guys a couple games ago. Now on a 2-game win streak, 2-0s for you guys. Do you think that this Knights team is finally starting to hit its momentum here in Phase 2, playing some of your best Smite?
Yeah, definitely playing a bit better. But then again, our last 2 games were versus the lowest rated teams, so
sure,
that has a little to do with it. But yeah, we definitely are improving on our game.
Well, I think you had a fantastic performance. Really, the entire roster did. A good game 1 on the Thoth, and then pivot over to the set. Talk to me through what the pick ban strategy is here. As always, you don't have to reveal too much, but when we're in picks and bans, we see Hebo, Set, and Robin locked in. I don't know exactly where all those pieces plug in. Didn't expect to see Neil on the Robin support. What was some of that communication like for you guys?
Well, we're just like, I don't know, we picked the Robin so early, we're like, oh, don't worry, we can flex it. So if people don't know
Yeah.
what flex means, it means like you could just swap it around to any role you want.
Got it.
So
To
we're like, yo,
different
let's
roles.
flex this. Let's flex
Right.
this, and then we pick the set. Let's flex this. Oh, the Hebo. Let's flex. We literally just have 3, and it's musical chairs basically. And then it was like, I want to play this set, and then that's kind of what happened.
Hey, too much flexing going on in the Knights. Hey, maybe not too much. You guys get the 2-0 win. Congrats. Thanks for taking the time, Paul. Best of luck in your future games. For everyone else at home, stick around. SSG United to round out the day right after this.